Say hello, my name is Carol Ritchie and I'm the Executive Director of the EUROPARC Federation, and I'd like to very much welcome all of you to this very first ever EUROPARC online conference. We have 212 delegates registered for the conference, which is absolutely fantastic, and I'm really grateful for all of you for coming along. And that's spread over 24 countries. And especially I'd like to say hello and welcome to our 11 youth delegates who are with us throughout the conference. So look forward to hearing especially from you guys as we interact, engage, network and learn from each other over the next couple of days. Most of you are from our countries of Europe, but we do actually have a small delegation from Australia, so it's a good afternoon to them, and one colleague from Brazil, so it's a very, very early morning and good morning to them in Brazil. So thank you to those who have made an extra effort in terms of getting up extra early to be with us this morning. So this is an opportunity for EUROPARC's members, friends, colleagues, acquaintances and anyone with an interest in protected areas to come together in these next 2 days to really consider what, are we ready for the future, the seems uncertain world that we seem to live in at the moment, and that will certainly be the focus of our thoughts over the sessions today and tomorrow. I'll do just some little technical information for you before I introduce our first couple of speakers. The first thing to point out to you is thank you, first of all, for navigating your way through the registration system and through setting up your profiles. We're very grateful for you to do that. It's been a bit of a technological learning curve for all of us to put something like this together. So again, thanks for your patience and endurance in getting through that process. But now that you've set up your profiles, I very much encourage you to use the web platform that we have created for this conference. It's a great place. It's a sort of a lobby of the conference. It's where through the message system you can chat to others as you would do as if you were standing in the lobby waiting for your coffee or at lunchtime. So please use the facilities for messaging, for connecting with people, old and new, or just someone who you think looks interesting. You might just want to connect with them too. So do make use of the facilities on the web platform throughout the next couple of days. That too, as you've hopefully discovered this morning, is the place where you'll find all of the links to all of the sessions for the conference. It's all in the program links page. As you've hopefully found out already, you just click on that and that will bring you, Spiros, we need you to stop sharing screen, thank you. If we can take a look on that, on other people's profiles, have a look at the attendees. Often at conferences you say, oh, I really need a list of who's entering, who's in the conference. Well, it's all there on the attendees list and in their profiles, so please take a look at it. What's also there today is the forgotten what I was going to say. Oh, is the help desk. Sorry, yes, the help desk. Up on the top bar of the web platform, you'll find a new section, the help section. So if for any reason you've got yourself stuck and you don't know how to use the Zoom or some other something else is not working properly, please go into that area, the help desk. Hopefully we've left all the instructions there and also the contact details of people behind the scenes who you're able to contact to get some additional help if needed. First thing we ask you to do when you come into the room is to make sure that your name is the name that you wish to be known by throughout this conference. So you have the opportunity to do that, to rename yourself. So please, if you could do that, you'll see that we in EUROPARC have all put our name and we're from the EUROPARC Federation. If you could also do that at some point during the session, it means that when we come to interact, we all know who we are. So please rename yourself with your organisation on your little Zoom window. Also want to remind you that all sessions throughout the conference are being recorded. So if for some reason you don't want to be seen on video, then you have the opportunity to close down your video at any time, so feel free to do that. When you enter the room, you will be muted, and we will give you the opportunity later on to unmute yourself, particularly when we have open sessions for questions. We absolutely welcome you to use the chat facility in Zoom. That's the space where you'll be asking questions to our speakers, and also if you want to interact or make some comments across the room with other people present. So please make use of the chat. That will be the main area that we will be monitoring for comments and questions that we will then pose to the speakers. And where there is time, we will open up the session for live questioning. To be able to do that, you need to be able to raise your hand. So again, we will be monitoring the participants list. So if you wish to speak or make a question to a speaker, you will need to raise your hand beside your name in the participants list, and then you will be called and given the floor to ask your questions. You have two options to be able to see the screen. If you're familiar with Zoom, up in the top right-hand corner, you have the option to view by gallery view. That way you can see as many people as possible, and you perhaps have to scroll through to see all currently 128 who are currently in the room, but as I say, 212 total registered delegates. Or you can go to speaker view, where you will just see the one speaker focused on the screen. When we're sharing screens, watching videos or presentations, obviously you'll be mainly seeing the screen with the presentation on it and a small, let's say, gallery of the participants on the side. So any other questions or information you need to rehearse or familiarize yourself about Zoom, all the guidelines are in the help desk in the web platform of the conference. Now, we also realise that being on Zoom all day is quite demanding on us humans. It's certainly been something we've all had to learn very fast in the last 6 months. So throughout the day, we have punctuated the day with little 5-minute breaks across the whole conference. So at the end of every session, there will be a 5-minute break, just to give you a moment to get away from the screen, to refresh yourself, and you know, just give yourself a moment's pause. So we will announce them as we go along. So you have a moment to step away from the screen if you feel you need to. I will be making a few special announcements throughout the day, so please keep tuned for that. The other thing about the recording I wanted to remind you is that we are recording, as I said, all sessions, and they will be available in a couple of days after the conference for just the registered delegates. They won't be on public display, but you will be able to go back and watch any session that you either missed or wanted to just hear again in a few days' time after the conference. So look out for that information when it comes. Okay, I think that's all the sort of technical information I wanted to say just now. As I say, I will be giving you updates and other announcements throughout the day. So again, welcome everyone to the first EUROPARC online conference. But like most EUROPARC conferences, we usually have a handover from one conference to the other. But of course, being online, that's been a little bit difficult to manage this year. So we have a special guest with us, and I'd like to introduce Guta Gabran, who is the Deputy General Director of the Nature Conservation Agency of Latvia, who EUROPARC members especially will remember were our hosts for last year's conference in 2019. And I'd like to invite Gunta just to remind us of our conference last year as we move into our 2020 conference. Gunta, I give you the floor.
Thank you. Good morning. Well, really nice greetings from Latvia, from this beautiful place. As you understand, we have some climate changes, and now we are together with Kakti as well. Well, last year in Latvia, in Ķemere National Park, we focused on words, nature on your mind, understanding our values. To be honest, this year on our mind was some coronavirus. And in spite of that whole situation, understanding the value of nature in Latvia became really important and necessary. We received enormous amount of visitors in national parks, nature parks. And by having some kind of troubles in Latvia, we understood that nature will give us all the green prescriptions and everything else. Of course, we learned to start working differently, to be on Zoom or on Skype. And we understood that it's really important to share our experience and to be with some kind of connections between humans. And I would like to say that one of our values is EUROPARC conferences as well, because we value this possibility that we have quite a wide scope of people who works with nature, understands nature, and that's why we are really, really happy and welcome from all our Latvian team that it was possible to join in Zoomia meeting. And all the best for this meeting and for those 2 days. Warm greetings again from Latvia, and with nature on our mind and with value of nature for all of us. Thank you.
Gunta, thank you very much. So that very neatly brings us into this new world that we inhabit, this Zoomia world. And that's where we will be, certainly for the next couple of days. Yeah, who would have thought what 2020 would have brought? And certainly, as Gunta has reminded us there, certainly nature has been very much on our minds, particularly as the coronavirus basically took over our lives or took away very important aspects of our lives from us. And that was very, very much part of our reflections when we put this conference together. We wanted to think about what is that new future and are we ready for it? So I'm going to hand over to Ignas Shops, the President of the EUROPARC Federation, to officially open our conference and reflect on our new future. Ignas, I give you the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Carol, and also thank you, Gunta, for your kind words. So I would say welcome Europe and also Australia and Brazil. Welcome members, delegates and friends, and also youth. I'm so excited that we have 212 delegates registered out of 24 countries and also 11 youth. So it's really, really good to be here from Latvia to Zoom, to do it differently this year. I'm going to make an introduction presentation and to set the scene a little bit more. And I hope that you can see my screen now. See how it works. Yep. Okay, there it is. So I think it's important to introduce us to what is happening today, because everybody was remembering what we were experiencing last year, and Gunta and also Carol were mentioning that last year we were with 370 participants out of 40 countries in the Cameri National Park, and with nature on our mind, we thought, and we hand over to this year's meetings where we thought that it would happen in Neusiedlersee in Austria. And of course, there were a lot of preparations there that were made and meetings that we were preparing. But of course, we were risking an empty table because of, the virus. So then, of course, we geared to another framework, another, let's say, way to do our conferences, and it is a Zoom conference for the first time, and I think it's very successful even before it began. So thank you for really for joining. But yeah, don't be afraid. Also, the conference in Neusiedlersee is still scheduled for for 2022. So the question will be what will happen in 2021, of course. But of course, in Neusiedlersee, we are, of course, inviting you, if everything's go well, in 2022 in May. And also our General Assembly, of course, is important to organize, and that's scheduled on the 27th of October this year. So be really happy to see you all again for that online General Assembly on the 27th of October. So the question really is, what happened to us? Suddenly we live in a different kind of world due to the COVID virus, of course. And we all know that it started in Wuhan in China at the wet market. And of course, we know also that at least a bat is the enemy for a lot of people, but they don't get sick, they don't die of the COVID virus. So maybe they are the solution. But we know that COVID changed the world, and we people, we are so crazy about what happened to us that immediately a pandemic existed, and we needed to bring in a lockdown for lots of places in the world. But we have to be aware of the human impact. So we are changing the biological rules where pathogens can no longer be controlled within their own natural ecosystems. That's because of us. So we have to question ourselves how to deal with that. If you look at today's update of the Worldometer about coronaviruses, you see that 27 million and a half coronavirus cases are now registered, and we're almost 900,000 people died of it. So we have something to work on. This lockdown, you could ask yourself, is this a splendid isolation? Did we become chickens? Huh? So how do we go, or how do you feel about this lockdown, about this isolation? And I think this is not the real way we want to live in harmony and in a close and a warm, let's say, society. So no, this is not a chicken. So we have to find solutions for the future that we can all live in harmony and healthy and in a healthy environment. And to say a little bit more about that, also this year on the Earth Day in 2020, it was 50 years, the celebration of Earth Day. And what you see there is not that good. So in the past 50 years, the global population has doubled. We cultivated, the cultivated surface for buildings and roads and so on increased with 22 million hectares. Grazing land for cattle increased with 30 million hectares, and cropland with 160 million hectares. It's all space that was taken from often natural ecosystems. Per person, the carbon dioxide emissions increased with 21% on average per person. And in total, 47% of increased the CO2 emissions globally. And you have to know that 10% is responsible for 50% of the emissions, so 10% of the people. The flights increased with 561%, dear friends. This is so, unbelievable. And the extreme weather phenomena increased with 44%. Meat production plus 65%. And plastics, don't need to mention that, plus 447%. So it's not good news. So what we know now is that the availability of water, energy, and food will, needs to be increased for the population. How to deal with that, to have enough water, energy, and food for ourselves and for all living creatures. Not to mention where, our core business. Not to mention the species. 1 million species are at the brink of extinction. Where in whatever group you're looking at, you see a severe decrease of biodiversity. So it is not good, this signal. And it goes far, far beyond the birds and the bees. And I think that's an important message I would like to bring, that often the outside world look at the environmentalists, the conservationists, as those friends from the birds and the bees, but it goes far beyond that. And the world starts to acknowledge that. We become aware of that. Our human body contains trillions, really trillions of living microorganisms. So we are full of life with small ecosystems that, and where also these kind of living organisms are shrinking as well, as fast as we know from biodiversity. So we need to recognize that this fact that it is not only the birds and the bees who are decreasing, but also all living creatures. Look to also the agricultural sector, our food. Also in the soil biodiversity, we see a decrease of species of living animals. So also for the future of our food production, we need to be aware that this is the ongoing story, and we need to halt as soon as possible the loss of living biodiversity here. So we are independent, but so dependent on nature. We need to be aware of that our life depends on a living, robust ecosystem. So this silent collapse of ecosystem is really hurting us. We are losing our comfort zone. Our climate stability is shrinking. The availability of water is shrinking. Clean air is shrinking, and of course we have this rapid loss of biodiversity. Our new future, how ready are we? Where we have a choice, I think, to make which way and which direction we want to go. And I know, and of course, everybody wants to go to the right side of this slide. We want to have a green living with clean air and proper water. We need to make a shift now. And that's what we are trying to do throughout this conference, this Zoom conference, this digital conference, that we see, we experience, and we exchange the skills and capacities we have to discuss about how resilient are the protected areas as cradles for new life, and also as migration starting places. How can we help the 2030 biodiversity strategy of the EU? Because I think we are, as an organization, very important to bring this to the level. The objectives are now written for 2030. How to deal with climate change? Can we play a role in that? And of course, how to deal with this COVID-19, and how can we be better prepared for that? Oh, sorry. Of course, what we did is that we flattened ourselves. So we did a lot of meetings throughout, let's say, the past year with a lot of delegates from everywhere. And there is a new thing that occurs on, let's say, on the horizon, and for me that's solidarity. We start to understand that we need each other to make big steps ahead for the best of our planet. And the other thing that we discovered was that we really are now feeling and seeing that how the natural environment is so healthy for us. For sure, in these COVID times, we were so pleased to go out and have these few moments that we can heal ourselves when we were in lockdown. And for sure, the peri-urban parks, I think, are so important, where lots of people in the cities who couldn't go out now have the availability in the peri-urban parks to really go out, and also, of course, trying to green the cities as well. But we discover the importance of our natural ecosystems nowadays, and that it's maybe a good way to go forward with that. Of course, we see that we have our European Day of Parks was completely in the theme of healthy parks, healthy people. Couldn't be chosen better than this year. And also we, let's say, published about it in our protected areas inside our, let's say, report that we do annually. We had webinars to discuss how to deal with this problem with each other throughout Europe, and we did a lot of webinars throughout the year with different topics, and they were very, very, very successful. And I would like to thank you for joining these multiple webinars to help us to make a better Europe for the environment. Also, the outdoor sports are now, we are really connecting with the Nature Conservation Organization, and we were, just before Corona, we had we had a lot of, let's say, interactions and also some conference to deal with that. So that's good that the connection is there. And of course, we have to reinvent our way to travel and how to spend our holidays. So that's where EUROPARC, as we have the largest network on sustainable tourist destinations in the world, we were discussing this, and we were, let's say, designing us and preparing us for the future. Also in relation to COVID, at several places throughout Europe, we had this discussion how to deal with that in tourism regions, because you know that a lot of regions really depend also on the tourists they are coming, and if we can do it more sustainable for the future, that would be a good thing, of course. We started to find new ways of traveling, and this is an ongoing story, of course, and hopefully we can, really bring this into our networks to travel differently, but with an open mind and really respecting the wildlife we discover. So it's about restoring our balance, and of course there is some good news as well. We have to tell this that there were on average 4.5 birds per person in the 1970s. It's now 2.2. So of course the world population is decreasing, which is, I think, a good thing. Also, 86% of all the people globally have now access to basic education, really good thing. Solar energy volume is multiplied by 400, good thing. There is also an increase of 3.2 million square kilometers forest restored. Of course, deforestation is not stopped, but of course there is, a restoration process going on. And also globally, there is 27 million square kilometers marine reserves now, but they are mostly in a lot of places still paper parks. So there's a really job to do on the marine reserves as well. But there is something other or something else that is going on, and also the economic sector is now coming in the debate, and that's a good thing, I think, where you saw that the global risk report of the World Economic Forum for the first time now is dominated by, let's say, the environment. So also, let's say, the economic sector is aware now how important the health of our planet is important for business as well. So that's a good thing, because they are joining now forces to make this sustainable shift for the future. The United Nations is planning to call for the state of planetary emergency at the end of this year at the General Assembly of the United Nations. I think is a good thing too. And of course, we have, as we are EUROPARC and working on a European level, we have the EU Green Deal, which we are really supporters of, where we see now that Europe is trying to take the lead globally for a new era where the Green Deal can become more and more, let's say, obvious and also accepted in other parts of the world. And you see the new Green Deal. I don't go into deep on this slide, but you see there's a complete transition, a systemic change that is now in the objective of the EU, and we cannot be supportive enough with EUROPARC Federation to help to make this happen. And yeah, for us important, there is a new biodiversity strategy 2030, where protected areas in Europe at 30% of land and 30% of seas needs to be a protected area in 2030. I don't go, you can read it on the screen, but you see this is an ambitious plan, and I think that we have an assignment or a task here to help this happening, because we are the largest network organization for protected areas and the natural heritage. We need to really make this happen, because, and that's a good thing, it's not only about new objectives and goals, also the EU is planning to unlock 20 billion euros a year for biodiversity and take this leading position in the world. I'm nearly there. Also, we as EUROPARC Federation, we made a position paper on these protected areas in the 2030 biodiversity strategy. And we were having meetings with Commissioner Sinkevicius and also do our annual seminar dialogues where we exchange views on nature conservation and restoration with the EU policymakers. So to end with our new future, how ready are we? Well, I think we have to be ready. We have to know that we are the guardians of the future. We have to take in mind, and really in our souls maybe, that we cannot allow to destroy what keeps us alive. So before I go and give the floor back to Carol, I would like to thank you all, and I say this on behalf of myself, but also on behalf of the Council of EUROPARC Federation, where we work very hard to bring this beautiful organization, beautiful federation to a higher level, and work with the ambition. So also on behalf of the entire Council, I would say thank you, and enjoy the conference throughout today and tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Ignace. Yeah, one of the disadvantages of Zoom is that we can't show necessarily immediately our appreciation of the speakers. So what I would ask you to do, if you wish to do so, is in the deaf language, this is the symbol for applause. So if you want to show your applause for a speaker, I ask you to do that. Or you can put the little symbol on your screen as well. It at least allows the speaker to know that you have appreciated their words. So I invite you to use that throughout the day. Well, thank you very much, Ignace, for, as ever, giving us some provocative thoughts to take into our conference. Nature is, of course, still very much in our mind. Thank you also to Gunther for reminding us of that. And Ignace too, just on your reflections on the issues and the things that have impacted on us as people in the year of 2020, but also, of course, has impacted our work in protected areas too. And also just to consider the policies and the programmes, both inside EUROPARC and in the wider sort of societal context that we also need to take on board. So I would ask you all to just give some reflection and considerations of that throughout today and tomorrow, and you know, to take the opportunity to engage with each other on these points, and to be thinking about just how ready we are and how ready we need to be the guardians of the future, as Ignace has reminded us. So as I said just at the beginning, we will have a few minutes pause between each session just to give you a chance to breathe and get away from the screen for a minute. I need to also remind you not to exit the room right now. I mean, you don't leave the Zoom room. This room will be open until 11 o'clock when the next session, the policy panel session, will start. If for whatever reason you do decide to leave the room, you can re-enter by re-clicking on the link to this session. As I said, we are just about to go into a 5-minute pause. Now, we're going to have these pauses throughout today and tomorrow, and what I've tried to do is I've given each pause a theme. So the theme of this pause coming up is connection. First of all, we've managed to connect into our Zoom conference, which I think is a challenge in itself, so well done for doing that. And we're beginning to connect to each other. But we have a special announcement to make today, because we're giving you another means by which you can also connect with each other. Right now, we are just about to announce the launch, in fact, I am now announcing the launch of our new Life eNatura2000.edu mobile phone app. This is a phone app which you'll download onto your phone, that we've been able to create through the eNatura2000.edu live preparatory project, which we are currently in the middle of. And thank you to all partners in that project for enabling us to create this new tool. So download it on your phone now. The link is available on the conference web pages. One of the slides that's going to come up during the pause will also give you the information on how to do that. This app will enable you to connect and indeed to twin, if you so wish, with your fellow park and Natura 2000 practitioners across Europe, or indeed even globally. It'll give you a chance to exchange with people working in the same habitats or the same ecosystems as you, or even just the same kind of protected areas: national parks, regional parks, nature parks, biosphere reserves, world heritage sites, geoparks, Natura 2000 sites, or just with people in the same language or multilingual people that you want to connect with, just to share experience, find new ideas, find tips, solutions to the common problems that we face. So please, during the pause or during lunch or another time, go on to the web pages of the conference. You'll find all the instructions on how to download the app on your phone, and I look forward to, when I get a chance to do it myself, to connecting with you on that. So, as I say, the theme of this pause is connect, so I give you a few minutes to just reconnect with yourself. Have a look at the slides that will be, if you wish, that will be coming up on the pauses. These slides will be shown at every pause. So if you miss the chance to see the Natura the app information, it will come round again. Also, quickly take the chance to look at the Natura 2000 Citizens Award. We're giving you a chance to vote for what you think is the best Natura 2000 project out there. So take a look at that as well. And whilst you're connecting, we can connect our minds and our experiences. So take a look also at the EUROPARC Knowledge Hub, where you can connect through the case studies, through your experiences, what everyone else is doing out there. So I'm going to move now just for a 5-minute pause, take a breather, and I'll see you back just in a few minutes. Or reconnect. Certainly for the workaholics, you'll have had 5 minutes to catch up with your emails this morning. So I know for many people who are doing multiple tasks at the same time. So, I think we're just about ready to start our next session. Good. Okay, I see everyone's got their cups of teas and coffees and refreshed yourself. We'll move on. As Ignace mentioned just in his opening remarks, Ignace and myself had the opportunity to meet with Commissioner Sinkevičius, the Commissioner for Environment, Oceans and Fisheries of DG Environment of the European Commission, just a few weeks ago. I don't know about the rest of you, but it feels like we had 1 month that ran from March to July, March-July. So sometime in that period of time, we had the opportunity to meet with Commissioner and exchange our thoughts about the biodiversity strategy and about the role that EUROPARC plays in terms of being the biggest network of protected areas in Europe. So we were very delighted that the Commissioner took time to speak with us, and I think we had a very interesting exchange. He, in that exchange, very kindly agreed to give us some input into our conference today. Unfortunately, he has other business and other duties to attend to, but again, he very kindly made a short video presentation for us, and I will move to show that video now, and you'll hear the words of Commissioner Sinkevičius to our conference and to the EUROPARC Federation. So if you just like to sit back for a few minutes, and the video will start just shortly.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure to address the EUROPARC Conference. This conference is a great opportunity for exchanging experience among protected areas practitioners throughout Europe. to learn from each other, increase and share knowledge, and to get ready for the challenges ahead. In May 2020, the Commission published its new biodiversity strategy. It aims to bring back nature into our lives. The strategy recognizes the multiplied benefits of biodiversity and sets a range of ambitious targets by 2030 to bring biodiversity on the path to recovery. Protected areas lay at the heart of the strategy. There is clear evidence that we need to protect more nature. We proposed that at least 30% of land and sea should be protected in the EU, and that at least 10% of EU land and 10% of sea should be strictly protected. But we do not need more paper parks. There are still many gaps in the setting of conservation objectives and measures at site level. Therefore, improving how effectively Natura 2000 and nationally protected areas are managed is a key task for the coming years. The leading involvement, expertise, and experience of protected areas management organization will be crucial for delivering on the ground. Before the end of this year, we will put forward criteria and guidance for identifying and designating additional protected areas to reach the targets in each biogeographical and marine region of the EU. The guidance will also indicate how the greening of cities can contribute to the targets and how management effectiveness could be improved. The biodiversity strategy also stresses the need for more ambition on restoring nature to ensure healthy protected areas and bring nature back to the wider landscape. We expect member states to take national commitment to ensure no further deterioration of protected habitats and species by 2030, and to improve the conservation status or trends for at least 30% of them. Moreover, we plan to propose legally binding restoration targets that will complement the existing legal framework. These targets, such as restoring the old-growth forests and peatlands, will act in synergy with the climate objectives. For the strategy to succeed, we need strong political commitment to support it. I hope the upcoming Council conclusions and the preparation by the German presidency, together with the European Parliament's reaction to the strategy, will provide that. This is a precondition to greatly improve the integration of biodiversity goals into other EU policies such as climate, energy, and in particular the funding of agricultural policy. We will need to ensure that EU spending in all these areas fully supports the strategy. EUROPARC is a key actor for many of the targets on protected areas and restoration. I am looking forward to further cooperation with you in the coming years. I'm already very curious about the outcome of your debates on climate change, sustainable tourism, and the role of the youth. I also take this opportunity to warmly thank EUROPARC for being an official supporter of the European Commission Global Coalition United for Biodiversity. Together, we will raise our voice for nature ahead of the crucial COP15 of the UN Convention on Biological Diversity next year. I wish you a very successful conference.
Great. Well, we pass our thanks to the Commissioner for those words to address our conference, and I think he's left us certainly with lots to consider and think about. I would certainly, we will certainly be making sure he is made aware of the considerations of our conference and our thoughts with respect to the biodiversity strategy and the other aspects that he mentioned, the farm to fork strategy and other elements. So again, I would be inviting you throughout the course of the conference to be thinking about what questions or issues you want to raise with the Commissioner and with the European Commission with respect to the biodiversity strategy in particular, and how we as the protected area community of Europe can respond and be an important actor in its implementation. whilst you're thinking about that, I would like to introduce Umberto Delgado Rosa, who is in the room, and he is the Director of Natural Capital in DG Environment. And I'm going to give him the floor for a couple of minutes just to perhaps make some further reflections on the Commissioner's words and maybe add, Umberto, your own words to that, if I can give you the floor. You need to unmute yourself, Umberto.
Okay, now I was allowed to unmute. Hello, Carol, Ignacio, all colleagues, very pleased to have this participation in the EUROPARC Conference and also to complement the speech of the Commissioner. And I would say, as you all intuit, well, it's obvious we live special moments as this digital setting shows, and all our minds should be on the lessons of what this pandemic means. And for sure, one of the lessons is nature related, that was already said. And I would like to build a bit on that. The first issue is, well, those of us that were confined in apartments, in cities that suddenly became silent, you could listen to birds again, etc. For many of us, this was also a wake-up call that things were not really being managed perfectly in our lives, in our traveling, commuting, meetings every time, consumption. I think many of us reflected about that. So in this sense, it's a huge challenge, of course, a pandemic like this one, and a big crisis, but it does open an opportunity for reflection and action in a different way. I would also say before the pandemics, we were already in the different setting. The EU Green Deal, how does it come out? Well, in my view, it came out as a political response to what was a strong message for big parts of public opinion. To begin with the youth, the movement for climate, that actually was also a movement for nature, if we look to their precise messages, but also results of elections, regional, national, European elections that showed a growing support for green, for environment. And in my view, that comes from the fact that if things are running bad for the global environment everywhere, the perception that they are going bad is also growing. So let's say the facts and the perception of the facts are getting clearer to more and more citizens. This, in my view, explains how the Green Deal was set and presented. But it's extremely meaningful, in my view, that both the EU Biodiversity Strategy for 2030 and the Farm to Fork Strategy for the Sustainable Food System, they were both approved amidst the pandemics, not after. Not because the pandemics was more important, we would delay everything. There was a delay, yes, because we were all struck by the confinement, but they came out in that moment with this message of bringing back nature into our lives. And simultaneously, I honestly think the biodiversity strategy of the EU proposed for 2030 is the most ambitious the world has ever seen. If we look to the details and everything it brings in, the measurable targets to address the main drivers of loss, this quantification, these measurable commitments, I think they are game changers that indeed they aim for the EU to lead by example, as it's the only way that the EU can lead towards the global New Deal for nature that we need. Now, where is the essence of what's important for EUROPARC, or if you want, where EUROPARC and all its members can be very relevant for this strategy? Well, one obvious is on the chapter of protecting nature. This aim to have a trans-European nature network, where the area of protected areas in London Sea increased to 30%, which is more of a challenge in the sea, where we need more 19%, than in the land, where we need more 4%. Having 1/3 of this as strict protection, having 30% of the currently protected habitats and species moved into a favorable conservation trend until 2030, and especially making the protected areas effectively managed and not badly managed is a big challenge, and there's a wealth of knowledge and experience and influence, connectivity, networking that EUROPARC can provide for all this. Let me also add another important aspect, which is this element of other effective conservation measures, including, but not exclusively, the greening of cities. How much can, through bringing more nature in cities, we build synergies with this protected areas target? That will also be very crucial, because it's urban dwellers that are strong supporters for nature. They want more nature next to them, and there are many benefits we can get where we have a lot of people. So, as our commissioner said, there's guidance coming out still this year. That's guidance to discuss with the member states, to agree with member states. We need the member states to come in with the proposals for more protected areas. It's not the Commission doing it. So let's say on feeding this process of the guidance and discussing it on all these elements, what is strict protection, how can one select further areas to designate, what the essentials for effective management, and to propose adequate site-specific conservation measures, etc. That will be very crucial. Another aspect where I think you can do a lot is on this innovative announcement of binding targets for restoration to come out in 2021 after a thorough impact assessment. I think this is quite new, as we do have nowadays restoration objectives already in our legislation, but some of them are not time-bound, and there are ecosystems which are out of the hook of restoration, and restoration is much needed. So identifying what habitats, what ecosystems to restore, which ones deliver more climate benefits, which is one of the goals. How can we tackle the, let's say, the sustainable use of ecosystems that are usually not under protection or not under restoration? All this is something where, again, I think your knowledge and experience will be very crucial. Take into account also that in this EU Nature Restoration Plan, you find in the biodiversity strategy, there's a lot about reducing pressures in farmland, in fisheries, such as bycatch protected species, invasive alien species, free-flowing rivers, and protecting soil. All these elements happen already, or should happen, in properly managed protected areas. So I find a lot of synergies on the potential of all the elements within the EU Nature Restoration Plan and what EUROPARC Federation does. I won't tell you more about the biodiversity strategy. There's, of course, if you look to these chapters on the new governance system, on finance, on knowledge, on engaging business, and so forth, I think that's the tools to ensure that we can move ahead towards a meaningful COP15 next year, where I do hope the EU can be influential. So in a nutshell, I do think the role of EUROPARC on management of protected areas, including but not exclusively Natura 2000, on designation, on sustainable tourism, a kind of tourism that is more palatable nowadays under COVID restrictions. Peri-urban areas where you have protected areas mingled with urban settings, reducing pressures, and very especially keep in mind that now we have this enormous crisis and a big recovery to come, and in many minds that will mean jobs and the economy. Very rightly so. After health, everyone needs a wage, a way of living. And so some minds will think, again, we can forget about nature. That's not the real business, is it? Wrong. Yes, it is. There's a lot of potential for jobs on nature restoration, on management of protected areas, on ecotourism, on agroecological practices, on planting trees, etc., etc. Please show it within Europe, because that will be important for the member states to take into account this big wave of funds also for nature and biodiversity. Well, as Commissioner, I'm very much looking forward for the use of ideas that can come from this meeting, and I hope these comments were useful. Back to you, Carol. Thank you.
Umberto, thank you very much. Much appreciated your additional comments there. I think we still have a couple of minutes spare, so I would like to offer people the chance to ask questions in the chat. And in particular, I think Mr. Del Rosa and the Commissioner have made an invitation to EUROPARC and certainly to the community of protected areas to consider, I think in particular, the peri-urban element of where people and nature meet. And of course, we have a very large peri-urban constituency inside our network. I certainly would like to give our youth delegation inside the conference the opportunity to speak. We've heard twice now that the thoughts and perspectives from the youth of Europe is very important in the considerations of the Commission, and I would really like to invite our youth delegations present to give some thought to that. And thank you again for recognising the value of networking and the capacity building that's needed and is gained through networking in order to increase our effectiveness as protected area managers. As Commissioner also said, we don't just need more paper parks, we need parks that are actually functioning and working. So I say to my colleagues in the protected area community in the Federation, in the EUROPARC Federation, the Commission have moved into our territory. This is what we know. Restoration of land, integrated land management, or nature and regional parks across Europe that's very much their work, is to find a sustainable way of managing and working in our landscapes that does provide jobs, that does preserve and conserve our biodiversity and create livelihoods for people and for nature. So this is a territory that our people know about, and this is the platform for us to begin this very important conversation with the Commission to really map out the future of our natural and cultural resources in Europe. So I'm first of all just going to open up for some questions. I think maybe Federico or Stefania, you might have a question just to ask, and then we'll take the questions that are appearing in the chat. So can I just open up for some comments or questions to Umberto? Federico or Stefania, do you have something?
Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Umberto, for your words. Yes, I think EUROPARC has a role to play. And I've seen already some questions, and you're already answering some of them on the live chat. I think what will be important is making sure those ambitious targets, and this is something that came up also in the Nature Directors meeting, can be endorsed and not stay on paper. And I think it's clear also from your words, an implementation process that involves organizations and managers, as in the audience today, but also a political commitment at different levels. So maybe you want to elaborate just a few words on what will be the steps to where everyone can play its role, because we have national agencies here, we have members who are really park managers, and others can contribute to support and pave the work, the process towards successful implementation.
I think I'm not muted. So yes, rightly so. So what follows? This is indeed the biodiversity strategy. It's a proposal by the Commission. It wouldn't survive without the active support of member states and the Parliament. So next step indeed will be Council conclusions expected under the German presidency for October. And we need ambitious conclusions that do endorse the strategy and its commitments. And with that, we will have in our hands support by the member states, which is very crucial. From the Parliament also, we expect continuing support, as we have been having till now on the biodiversity strategy. But now there are many bits and pieces for this to work. We have counted the actions for the full implementation of the biodiversity strategy, and that goes above 100. Some will come very quickly, 2020, like the guidance I referred. Then there's a EU forest strategy coming next year, building on the biodiversity strategy, and so forth and so forth. That demands a lot of coordination among the Commission and member states, and it also requires that other pieces farm to and its it has some equivalent targets for farmland than the biodiversity strategy. 95% of the EU agricultural land loss. All that will also have to be diminished. We also need to shape the drivers of loss, as for instance, agriculture policy and the common agriculture policy with its funds, towards a way that does integrate better biodiversity and its needs for the sake of agriculture itself, because in the end, the loss of services from ecosystems hampers production and productivity. So it's a long process where we need to keep an European society engaged, and you are part of that.
Good. Thank you again. We will be storing the questions that have come up in the chat, because in the policy panel discussion coming up soon after 11 o'clock, Umberto will definitely be available to answer questions in more detail then. So don't think we've forgotten about them. We'll store them for that next session, because I would like to now thank you very much, Umberto, for your intervention there. And please send our thanks back to the Commissioner, but of course we will do so personally too. But thank you very much. I'm going to now move to our next session. And on this occasion, we have invited Christian Baumgartner, I do hope I have pronounced your name correctly, Christian, to present to us his considerations on biodiversity and just where we are as protected areas in Europe, as a community in Europe. So Christian, I'd like to hand the floor to you to take us through your thoughts and considerations.
Well, good morning to everyone. I think you're sharing the recorded video now?
Yes, we will. Yeah. I just wanted to introduce you so that people knew who you were, so you could identify yourself. So Christian has prepared a presentation in advance. We're going to see it now, but as I've just identified, he is in the room, and of course he will be available to make comments and take your questions afterwards. So please, as you're watching his presentation, please, and I invite your questions in the chat, and Christian will be available to take them immediately afterwards. So please enjoy the presentation.
Good morning. Thank you very much for this kind invitation. I'm here today to talk a little bit about a specific form of wildlife, about the camel and this famous old question, how the camel fits through the eyes of a needle. Once times were so easy. For example, national parks were here for protection, for research and education, a little bit for recreation. This brought orientation. This was the base for strategies and of course was reflected in mission statements. In this word cloud here on the slide, you see the 100 most frequent words that are used in the mission statements of protected areas. Well, this was in 2015, 2014, but usually you do not change your mission statements every year. Therefore, I do think that today's mission statements are still rather alike. But those easy times are not here anymore. If you ask people today how they would describe anything related to development inside and outside protected areas, the answers are quite different. We're talking about trends, dilemmas, change, seeking, confused choices, alternatives. We're living in the VUCA world. And VUCA is an acronym first used in the late 80s. It's coming from leadership theories. It stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Our world today is constantly changing. It's becoming unstable every day. Bigger and smaller changes are becoming more unpredictable, and they're getting more and more dynamic and happening faster and faster. And events are unfolding in a completely unexpected way, so it's becoming more and often impossible really to determine cause and effect. Our modern world today is more complex than ever. Problems and the effects are multi-layered, they're harder to understand. Decisions are reduced to measured reactions and counter-reactions, and choosing the single correct path is almost impossible. So making decisions today requires courage, awareness, and the willingness to make mistakes. And what we really need today, and this could be also a role for protected areas managers, is VUCA facilitators. And these VUCA facilitators have the ability to turn this VUCA world into vision, understanding, clarity, and agility. Taking a closer look to what we're facing today. The German Zukunftsinstitut, Future Institute, is working for several years already on the analysis of trends and megatrends in society. And there are manifold mutual interferences and reinforcements. Basically, a megatrend is a long-term development with high relevance for all different areas of society and economy. So megatrends can be extended into the future with a rather high degree of reliability. So they make changes more understandable or even more challenging if you look to that map, this megatrend map 2.0. Looking to trends like new work, new ecology, silver society, but also contrary trends like connectivity versus individualism are here. And all above that, there are the new or even less new mega drivers. Of course, there's climate change. In 2018, the World Economic Forum in Davos called for the so-called globalization 4.0. They called for a new wave of globalization that should create social benefits as well as provide technical solutions for climate change. And of course, currently now we have this mega driver of the new pandemics. And we're quite sure that this one that we're facing now was not the last one. All this leads to more complex and more demanding policies and strategies, looking to the Sustainable Development Goals, to the different climate treaties, also to the EU biodiversity strategy that you heard about some minutes ago. Trying to reduce this complexity now and coming to some islands of refuge and happiness. Unfortunately, only the fewest protected areas are such islands, neither in the literal nor the figurative sense of the world. In the next 10 minutes, I would like to describe 10 different observing, challenging theses in 5 different topics: biodiversity, climate change, tourism, education, and regionality. Starting with the drivers and theses in biodiversity. We heard about the EU biodiversity strategy for 2030, bringing nature back into our lives as part of the EU Green Deal. We also have the upcoming UN Decade 2021 till 2030 on ecosystem restorations. Here the task force already started, and what they already realized is that they just have very few good or best practices. And this decade is not about replanting trees or cleaning the rivers, but it's about social benefits and positive custom balance. So therefore, we need new principles of participation. But also the societal pressure is increasing, not only the political demand is increasing. We're looking to different countries and we see that deforestation, the search for mineral resources or the release of fishing in protected areas is increasing, be it in Europe, be it in the Amazons or in the US. This brings me to 2 theses on biodiversity. First, yes, the EU biodiversity strategy is indeed a very powerful document. But going and looking to the details, for example, the transformation of at least 30% of Europe's lands and seas into effectively managed protected areas. And knowing from several protected area managers today that the management of the areas today is already very challenging, this leads to my thesis that the implementation of this will present the protected areas with enormous management challenges. And for the ecosystem restoration, we need new skills, different participation methods, future labs, etc. Second, protection status alone is not sufficient anymore, not for effective long-term preservation of the protected properties. Yes, many of the protected area managers have to struggle with the situation in their own country. Nevertheless, it really needs international political and solidarity and international commitment. We need better strategies and we need tools to support each other beyond borders. Second part, climate change. Again, coming to the biodiversity strategy. Here we read that nature-based solutions, such as protecting biodiversity and restoring ecosystems, are an excellent means of countering the effects of climate change. This is demanding. There is a societal expectation, and this one is increasing. So protected areas need adaptation strategies to climate change that on the one hand can cope with the adaptation of climate change per se, but on the other hand, we know also that a reaction to climate change, more and more people are seeking for these recreational areas outside of the cities. So adaptation strategies need also to deal with the required compensation of climate change impacts elsewhere. Also, the political demand is increasing. We have the European Green Deal, we have the Paris Agreement, and both aim for the EU to be climate neutral till 2050. This means an economy with net zero greenhouse gas emissions. And this objective is really at the heart of the European Green Deal, and it's in line with the EU commitments in the Global Climate Action, the Paris Agreement. What does this mean for protected areas? Even if your impact is relatively low, you need to serve as a role model. Even you are contributing to climate change, and you need to rethink all your activities, all your infrastructure, be it buildings, mobility, supplies, offers. Protected areas have to be and to operate climate neutral as soon as possible. Third part, tourism and leisure. Again, the social pressure is increasing. More and more people search for so-called undisturbed areas, not only, but also after COVID-19 crisis. What I think is that traditional forms of the visitor management are not sufficient anymore. This search for these undisturbed areas in combination with the social media, especially with Instagram, will create new hotspots with an enormous speed. So what we need is new flexible instruments to react quickly on those new developments. On the other hand, the societal demand is also changing. I think that unsustainable forms of tourism, such as cruises, après-ski and intensive winter tourism, sun, sea, sand, beach tourism, and others, are decreasing, partly more as a reaction to the COVID-19 crisis than due to a sudden huge environmental awareness of the consumers, but they will decrease. And on the other hand, new forms, new trends, more sustainable forms of tourism, like health tourism, are coming up. We know this One Health concept that tightly connect the human health to the health of animals and the environment. It was created in 2004, the Wildlife Conservation Society formulated first principles, and today it's an ongoing and overarching principle that was already taken by EUROPARC. I know that in 2015 you launched the Health and Protected Areas Initiative, aiming at health promotion, promoting effects of natural stays in protected areas. Also, Victoria Parks in Australia took that as Healthy Parks, Healthy People initiative. So there are ongoing activities already in protected areas. But we see also that this really turns into tourism products. It started with the healing effects of waterfalls, and it's now in this form of forest bathing. Coming originally from the 50s from Japan, it arrived now in Europe. And nature near forests are now used for turning and developing new tourism products. And you need to see that, and you need to accept that protected areas are also important touristic stakeholders. And you need to go for a full implementation of sustainable tourism principles in your destinations. And the destination is usually larger than the protected area, so the core area of your interest itself. Education and edutainment. Again, social pressure is increasing. We have an aging society, with an increasing number of people with mobility restrictions or any other special needs. And if we talk about integration of people with migration background, especially this bringing young people closer to nature and ecosystems is a major challenge here in in the term of integration. So you need to find ways really to fulfill your claim. I always hear that national parks and other protected areas are open to all visitors, and that you offer experience-oriented offers for different target groups. At the moment, I do think this claim is hardly fully fulfilled. Societal demand is increasing. This COVID-19 now has given really a real push for digitalization, both in the classroom and outside in leisure. But I see and I know that environmental education is rather conservative. I did a study for Danube Park some years ago. The largest number of the protected areas there did not do the step from nature education to environmental education. And only very few are implementing real principles of education for sustainable development. By far, most of the research protected areas have a focus just on children in schools. And they really hardly integrate this trend towards digitalization into their educational work. So my thesis here is that you're actors in education for sustainable development, and you need really to integrate this trend towards digitalization into your educational work. In the last area, and this is really a positive outlook, regionality. We have this new EU strategy, Farm to Fork, which drives towards a more sustainable agriculture, a whole food supply chain. It's also in the heart of the European Green Deal. And it's the first time that the European Commission really presents such a comprehensive approach, covering every step in the food supply chain, from the production to consumption. Protected areas, usually having a more integrated approach to land management, are both key actors in promoting this new European strategy, but you could also be a key beneficiary on the upcoming respective EU policies, programs, and actions. And also societal chances are increasing. If you discuss with consumers, with tourists, you hear that authentic regions and regions per se have a really increasing importance in the mindset of larger and larger parts of the society. So you know that, or I know that you do a lot of horizontal and vertical networking. So protected areas really can assume important roles within a region. So you need to become engines of sustainable regional development by active networking, and often also taking the role of moderators and enablers. Last but not least, as protected areas are considered healthy and authentic regions, you could really use this for building up a consistent image, and also use it for better implementation, funding of their or your objectives. Looking to a summary of all this thesis, we're talking about management challenges and new skills that are needed. We're talking about international political solidarity and commitment that's needed. Talking about adaptation strategies to climate change. About your own contribution to reduce the CO2 emissions and to come to a zero emission economy. Talking about new forms of visitor management reacting to social media. Talking about the need to be a touristic stakeholder in your region and to look at all different kind of visitors and include them in your educational activities, and change or integrate also digitalization into those activities. At the end, protected areas are engines of sustainable regional development. And the very positive final message is you're considered as healthy and authentic regions. Really make value out of this good starting point. Coming back to the picture of this camel going through the eye of the needle, I think it fits, but it can be that we have to make an effort for it, all of us and all of you. Thank you very much. I'm here now for questions and hopefully answer that.
Well, thank you very much, Christian, for those very stimulating and thought-provoking words. I'd like to just give you back the floor if you'd like to just to add to your considerations there, particularly in light of what you've heard from the Commissioner and from Igneous this morning, and then we'll open up the floor for questions. So please, if you're still thinking of some comments and questions, please put them in the chat. Christian.
No, it's just listening to myself really brings out the point that it seems there's a huge demand and very high expectations to all protected areas. And actually, I'm not sure how you manage that, but I mean, this is how it is at the moment. I'm very interested now in comments and feedback from your side.
Great. Well, I have a few some thoughts to kick off, and I'm sure others will join in. So I will be keeping an eye on the chat, and if there is time, I think there might be some time, we might take some points from the floor as well. So I was very interested in your description of the VUCA worlds, the volatility, the uncertainty, the complexity and the ambiguity. I think certainly that's been definitely features that we can all recognize in the last 6 months. But I very much like your consideration that we need to move to where we have vision, understanding, clarity and agility. That takes a particular set of skills and competencies for protected area managers, or for all working in protected areas, to be able to exhibit those types of characteristics, that vision, that understanding, that clarity and agility. Might you give some thought or reflections on, yeah, the kinds of the skill set that the modern protected area manager needs to perhaps be developing?
Well, I do think it's all about communication in all different forms. And what I see is that several of the protected areas that I know already kind of shifted their mission towards really being a very active player in the regional development and being a mediator there. So the skills you need is really trying to know all the different stakeholders that you have around you, to involve them actively. So skills of participation, skills of instruments, how to facilitate development processes that really go also beyond the borders of the protected areas. So I think the main task is really participation, communication, and all the different related instruments for that.
Yeah, thank you. I've often myself said that I think protected area managers need to know more about psychology than they do ecology, because it is, in the end of the day, all about people. I'll just see if there are any questions coming, but just as those questions are coming, I just wanted to make a reflection on some of your considerations to the protected area community here. Christian has set some challenges for us, and I think that's important, that we need to be exemplars of sustainability and to be climate neutral places in our own right. And I think that is something we need to really reflect on. If we are trying to be communicators about the need to be more sustainable and to protect and conserve our biodiversity, we need to be examples of that in our own working practices. So perhaps that's an area I can encourage you to stimulate some discussion about in the messaging and in the feeds on the conference pages and conference web pages, or perhaps even start a discussion in the new mobile phone app that you have, I'm sure, already downloaded and are willing to exchange ideas with colleagues across Europe about how we can reduce our own carbon footprint before we start telling others how to do likewise. So I think I've said enough, and I'm going to open up to some questions from the chat. Misha, I know you've been taking a look at that. Let's just see.
Yes. So there is one question from Stefania Petrosilo related to what you were saying about the need of communication. And she's asking, the use of social media by visitors is a real challenge for preserving strict protected zones and sensitive areas. So how should it be managed?
Good point. I mean, on the one hand is use social media not only as a marketing instrument, but use it also as a tool for visitor management. So use the social media in a kind of counter strategy, also to guide the visitors to that places where you want them too. This is one part of the answer. And the other part is be aware of the fact that especially Instagram can really bring a very sudden and very quick pressure on specific points, and find ways to react on that. Do visitor management, on visitor monitoring, not only on the long term, but really on a daily basis. React when you know that, when you see that, I don't know, 100 visitors already reached a point, close areas or close access to some areas. You need to find really some new instruments that are more flexible than the long-term or mid-term visitor management that usually in place in the parks.
Thanks, Christian. Misha, any other comments from the chat?
Yes, thank you very much. There is also a question from Olaf Holm. How to connect not protected areas, climate change, and stop losing biodiversity in a general is a general issue. Protected areas could give examples for the not protected areas. And then I believe that's a reaction from René Biazone, who asks, maybe part of the new protected areas will be established closer to urban areas where brand new undisturbed areas will be created. Maybe Christian has some comments about that.
I'm not sure if it really makes sense to develop a new type of protected areas. And I'm also doubt that really undisturbed areas are very close to urban areas. But yes, it is also about connecting protected areas. Ecosystem connectivity is a big issue that goes also a little bit beyond what I already said, and is an additional challenge.
Misha, just whilst we've got some moments, I am going to open up the mics to allow some people to ask their questions. And Paul Hotham, you've made some very interesting points there, quite complicated questions. So perhaps, Paul, if you could unmute yourself and put your question directly to Christian. Thanks.
Hi, Carol. Hi, everybody. Good morning, Christian. Thanks. It was a really interesting presentation. My point really is that, of course, we need to adapt to address and meet the future needs of society. And it's great that everybody's suddenly focused on what we've always found most important, biodiversity and nature. And there's a lot of positive change that's come as a result of that, and a lot of opportunity. But I worry that essentially nature's just becoming another form of global consumerism. I can't go to the supermarket, so I'm going to go to the Instagram snap. I'm going to go to the green space. People are telling me it's good, but also I can consume it. And I wonder if at some point, and not before it's too late, whether as well as providing a service and meeting the needs of society, we're also part of the message saying, hey, you also have responsibilities about striking a balance in the world and managing and changing your own behaviors. And I know it's a big issue, but I just wonder what you thought, Christian. Thank you, Carol.
I perfectly agree with what you say. I mean, all this looking now for these undisturbed areas after the COVID or in the COVID crisis is not only because really nature has a high value, it's also because of simply searching for distance to other people. So it's not only because of loving biodiversity. So the pressure will even be larger by that. And yes, I fully agree that, I mean, this is what you anyway do already, is awareness raising for your goals and for the importance of biodiversity in ecosystems. So this task will not end so far, and it's even more important in the future.
Thanks. Yeah, nice to see some exchange. You know, if other people have comments that you want to make on these questions, please put them in the chat. It doesn't have to be just a dialogue, but I'd like to move now to Pete Rockcliffe. Pete, you've got a question to pose as well. If you can unmute yourself.
Thanks, Carol, and thanks, Christian. Excellent presentation. And the challenges are really familiar to us in Scotland. I guess the thing we've been pondering about is how we're going to get the investment to address these challenges as protected area managers. And we've been looking, I guess, at private finance. So I just wonder whether you have any comments about the role of investment and the need for greater investment in protected areas and the role particularly around private finance in that.
Good point, of course, very important point. And I'm sure that by the current means protected areas have, you will not be able to cover all those challenges and demands that are put on you. So I think on the one hand, it's a political discussion process that you have to go into, convincing also political sides to, at the end, pass more finances if there is more demand on your services and roles. And on the other hand, also thinking about private investment might be a way to go, but I don't think that I can really decide, or I have no clear opinion on that. I think that I know that some protected areas started with special projects that are also crowdfunded. That's an interesting way. This was successful in some cases. I need to pass this question also to Carol, asking if there is already a policy on private investments for services in the protected areas.
I'm not sure if there's a universal policy, but there's certainly a lot of good experience and good practice out there. And I think we actually have some examples on our Knowledge Hub on the EUROPARC website. So I don't have the information prepared right this moment in time. But certainly, there's a number of aspects of consideration. There's sort of ethical considerations that a protected area might need to take in terms of where corporate funding might be coming from. But on the other hand, I think there are good examples of perhaps more regional funding where companies or organisations or institutions can identify with the regionalisation aspect that you mentioned, that protected areas have an important role to promote in one of your thesis that you presented in your presentation there. So without going into lots of detail, yes, there are some good examples out there of funding that can be achieved through private initiatives for the work of protected areas. And I think it is, we always end up coming to this subject at every EUROPARC conference. So it's an issue that's always evolving, and I think it's something that we need to always be learning from each other in terms of, what are the best arguments to be putting forward, what are the political, lobbying that we need to be doing, and also to also make sure that our own house is in order with regards to what it is we want the money for and who we're going to take the money from. So I think, without any more details, I'm quite sure though that many people across the EUROPARC family have experience of this. And again, I would encourage you to share your thoughts, ideas and solutions either in the chat and certainly in the other platforms that we have available to us. Now, so I sort of half answered or didn't answer your question there. I just pointed you to where there might be some information, because I do want to take other questions from the floor, and we still have 5 or 6 minutes to do that in. So Jula from Kuleberg in Sweden, I give you the floor to ask your comment or ask your question or make your comment. Remember, you have to unmute yourself first. Is she there?
Sorry, then there was also Enzo and Jan who raised their hands.
Yep, thanks, Misha. Okay, Jan, we'll take you just now then before we go back to Jumala. Jan from Germany. Are you there? You do need to unmute yourself. No? Okay, who else wanted to ask a question, Misha?
Enzo wanted to ask a question.
Enzo Navarro, I will come to you for your question.
I agree with presentation. It was very, very excellent. I ask how digital technology can help for our targets. I think digital technology can be very, very important, but I ask your advice. Thank you.
I think it's an old discussion in environmental education. There's many environmental educators that really doubt that young people going out with their mobile phones or with their iPads into nature realize the value of nature. But there are other environmental educators that especially say, well, we need to take them where they are, and they are at the moment at the use of all these smartphones and devices, and make really use of that and develop apps and possibilities to connect their interest in their devices with environmental education, education for sustainable development. And there are already wonderful apps and some really good examples in protected areas, how this could work out and how this really could be implemented. And also research shows that the results for these young people is that at the end, they know more about nature and biodiversity, they have a better connection, and some of them also then at the end going out into nature without the devices. So really the advice from my side would be make use of what's existing in technology and digitalization, and try to connect this with your content-wise goals.
Okay, we just have, thank you very much again, Christian, for taking questions. We have two more and then we will close. Stuart Pritchard, Scottish Natural Heritage. Stuart, are you there?
Coffee break already.
Hi, Carol. Sorry, I wasn't actually there. I didn't actually ask a question, but I am.
Oh, you put your hand up, yeah? Your hand was up.
Oh dear, so that was a mistake. Move on. All right, move to the next one.
Okay, Janet, you definitely have a question.
Hi, thank you very much for that presentation. It was very interesting. I would just like to hear your thoughts on how you see the meeting and management of societal expectations evolve over the next few years. It was something you brought up at the very beginning. Thank you.
Sorry, the audio connection is not good at the moment. I did not fully understand your question.
You introduced the issue of societal expectation, and I wondered how you saw its evolution for protected areas in terms of meeting and managing those expectations.
I described the different societal expectations, and this goes partly in the use of the ecosystems. It goes partly in the touristic and leisure use, so increasing pressure from different sides. And what I really face is, what I think is that the challenge, especially if the demand is at the end from the biodiversity strategy to come up with at least 30% of the land space and sea space as a protected areas in an effective management, that already now many protected area managers are telling me that with this financial means that they have at the moment, with the capacities in staff and personnel, it's not possible really to establish an effective management. And if you enlarge the area without enlarging the finances for this, management will not be better at the end. So I think really the biggest challenge as a reaction to this societal demand is to find the public recognition, the recognition by the politicians and the administration, and at the end also the finances for this. Carol?
I forgot to mute myself that time. Yeah, certainly starting to, I think, get the thought processes really, thought juices really flowing now. I'm just going to leave the final word to Ignace. I think you made an important comment there before we go to the break. But Ignace,
Yeah, thank you, Christian, for your excellent presentations. I had a question or maybe a remark, but because it's possible to pull the camel through the eye of a needle, but why don't we widen the opening of the eye of the needle? in that sense, it means that we, I think, as a network organization, excuse me, for the environment, need to open up to the other, let's say, sectors who are reigning or governing the world, and to open up with them and start a discussion and integration, because I think that there is a lot of progress to make in the other sectors to widen the eye of the needle.
Fully agree. I think this talking and involving different stakeholders is not only a task on the level of the protected areas, but also on the umbrella organizations. So yes, you need to find some allies also on the EU level to cooperate with and to implement all this. Fully agree.
Just for everyone's information, Ignace will be making a sort of a reflections presentation at the end of the day, so I'll be gathering thoughts from everything that's been discussed throughout the day. Okay, we are about to go to our second pause of the morning. This time you'll get a little bit longer, probably closer to 10 minutes, just for coffee, because this is where we normally would have our coffee break in our conferences. So again, you've got the opportunity, as you would in a normal conference, to chat with people over a cup of coffee. You can do that in the conference webpage. Don't forget, you will also be able to download the mobile phone app to reconnect with people that way. We've also put onto the conference feed, the messages area, some information about an event or something that's happening tomorrow. Mike Appleton, who's giving a presentation about capacity building tomorrow, has asked as many of you can to please fill in the little training needs analysis exercise. It's just so that he has some material to work with tomorrow. So if you find some time during the day to do that, please have a look on the link that's on the conference webpage, and please take part in that. The other aspects, voting for your Natura 2000 Citizens Award is still open, and the information will be there on the slides during the coffee break. So the theme of this pause is refresh. Time to refresh your screens, refresh your body, refresh maybe with some new ideas, and we'll see you back at 11 o'clock for the next session. Do remember, however, on this occasion, you will be leaving this room. This link will close before 11 o'clock. You need to go into the program links section of the webpage and click on the link to enter the new session, which will start at 11. Okay, we'll see you then.